What do you do when the bank tells you that you owe money you never borrowed, then reads back your mother's phone number as the contact on the account? That question split my life into a before and after. Before, I was the reliable one. I showed up on time, kept my head down, paid every bill early because late fees felt like personal failure. I rented a small apartment over a bakery that opened at 6 and smelled like warm sugar by 7. I worked as an operations analyst, which is a polite way of saying I solved other people's messes with spreadsheets. On Sundays I called my parents, listened to their updates, and texted my brother a thumbs up on whatever big idea he was chasing that week. Family was noise and comfort, always there, rarely tidy. After started on a Tuesday. I was on hold with a supplier, listening to a saxophone loop that sounded like it was recorded in a tiled bathroom, when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I would have ignored it, but the voicemail preview flashed in 3 blunt words: fraud. Urgent. Call. Alex? My co-worker Mina peeked over the cubicle wall. You look like you swallowed a battery. Just a call, I said. My mouth was already dry. I'll be right back. I stepped into the stairwell. Concrete walls. Echoes. That sterile building smell. Then I called the number. Thank you for reaching Crestline Bank Fraud Prevention. For verification, please confirm the last 4 digits of your social. I gave them. One more question, the voice said. Calm, pleasant, practiced. Your emergency contact on file ends in 41. Is that still your mother's number? My throat did something strange. What account is this for? Your personal line of credit, she said. Opened 6 months ago. We're calling because of 2 missed payments and a change in your email address last Friday. I don't have a line of credit, I said. A small pause hummed through the line. I see. Well, there are 2 active accounts, a personal line ending in 7731 and a business revolving account ending in 9924 under Aurora Craft & Company. Total balance across both is $46,200. Are you saying you did not authorize these? I didn't even know they existed. My hand left a sweaty print on the railing. What address do you have? She read it. My parents' house. The one with the slanted porch and the cedar tree that drops needles all over the driveway. Sir, the voice softened, I'm going to freeze both accounts pending investigation. You'll need to come to a branch with ID to file an affidavit. If this is identity theft, we'll... I thanked her and hung up before I heard the rest. Mina found me by the elevator. Hey, you good? I nodded too fast. Yeah, just need to step out. I didn't step out. I fled. Outside, the wind cut down the street with little knives in it. I walked without knowing the direction, then bought a coffee because holding something hot felt like proof my hands still worked. The cup burned my palm. I didn't care. Aurora Craft & Company. I knew that name. My brother had said it once, casually, like it tasted expensive. It's not just a furniture shop, he'd told me over ribs at my parents' place, 6 months back. It's a whole brand, man. Local makers, pop-up workshops, custom builds. People love a story. Mom had clasped her hands. Isn't he wonderful? Dad nodded with that soft, proud smile he saves for church and playoff games. I'd smiled then too. Of course I had. On the corner, a billboard for a personal injury lawyer grinned down at traffic. I stood there like a man reading scripture. Then my phone buzzed again, an email this time. Subject: Welcome to your new Crestline online banking. I clicked. Welcome, Alexander. Your online profile is ready. Email: Aurora.accounting at. Mailing address, 147 Cedar Lane. Cedar Lane. My parents. I walked straight to the bank. The branch manager looked like a retired linebacker who'd traded shoulder pads for a navy blazer and the world's kindest tie. His name tag said Victor. He led me into a small glass box of an office and listened while I explained, my voice steady only because it had nowhere else to go. "Let's pull the file," he said. He typed. The printer coughed a few pages into existence. He slid them to me with a pen, as if I might need to circle my disbelief. Application for personal line of credit, Alexander H. Driver's license number, correct. Mother's maiden name, correct. Email, changed last Friday to aurora.accounting at. Emergency contact, MOM, ends in 41. Mailing address, my parents' house. Signature, mine. Except it wasn't. The way the downstroke in Maya hooked too hard. The loop on the X. It was close enough to pass a glance test. Not enough to pass my gut. There's also a notarized letter authorizing a change of address, Victor said, lowering his voice. Notary, M. Delgado. Mrs. Delgado? I said before I caught myself. They live 2 doors down from my parents. Victor held my gaze for a beat longer than neutral. Not judging. Not pitying. Just present. We'll get this flagged immediately, he said. I'm not supposed to say this, but... He glanced toward the tellers, then back. Sometimes it's somebody you know. The details they need aren't always easy to guess. I nodded, because if I tried to speak, I wouldn't. He printed the business account information, too, and slid it over. Aurora Craft and Company. Owners, Ryan H. and Alexander H. My name there in neat font I never typed. Co-owner of a dream I'd never been invited to. Co-owner. I said. Victor tapped the notarization line. The stamp was crisp. The ink a fresh, smug black. I had never signed that page. But there was my name, looping obediently, like a dog that comes when any whistle blows. How do they even? I started, then didn't finish. I knew how. Years ago, when I moved into my first terrible apartment with the perpetually crying pipes and the mushroom in the bathroom, Mom asked if she could keep photocopies of my documents for safekeeping. She had put them in a plastic file box labeled important with a smiley face sticker. I remember the sticker because it felt like a joke nobody meant as a joke. Victor helped me file the fraud claim. He photocopied my ID. He gave me a stack of papers and a card with his direct line. We'll do what we can, he said, then added, softer, I'm sorry you're dealing with this. I walked out into a city that looked like itself but didn't feel like mine. The bakery under my apartment had sold out of cinnamon knots. The glass case was shiny and empty. I stared at my reflection until a woman cleared her throat behind me, and I realized I was blocking the door. Back in my kitchen, the radiators banged like someone kicking the pipes with boots. I pulled my credit report. It was worse than I thought. 2 store cards I didn't recognize. An equipment lease for a wide belt sander I had to Google. A soft credit pull from a lender I'd never approached. 3 weeks ago, the same day my brother posted a photo of a newly renovated workshop with the caption, "We're just getting started." My phone buzzed. Ryan, bro, random Q. Did you ever get those forms from the small biz grant? I need a sample. I stared at the screen until his text blurred and doubled. We need to talk. Now. He didn't reply. A minute later, another message chimed. MOM. Dinner Thursday? Roast chicken. Your favorite. I typed and erased 3 responses before I managed. Sure. Then I drove to their house, because I knew if I waited I would talk myself out of the one thing I needed to do. Look them in the eyes and ask the question I already feared the answer to. The cedar tree out front had grown wider, its branches drooping like tired arms. The porch light was on, though it was barely sunset. Through the front window, I could see the soft glow of the TV and the curve of my mother's shoulder where she sat on the couch, her fingers moving while she scrolled. The door was still painted the same cheerful blue Dad promised Mom he would touch up every spring. He never did. The paint peeled in thin curls at the edges like paper on a school bulletin board. I stood on the step with the stack of printed statements in my hand and realized my hands were shaking. Not with rage. Not yet. With the grief of a truth that had been there the whole time if I'd wanted to see it. Dad opened the door before I knocked. He must have seen my car pull up. "Alex!" he boomed in that too big voice he uses to make anything seem like a celebration. "Well, look who the wind blew." "Hey, Dad," I said. My voice came out calm. "Can I come in?" Of course, of course. Your mother's in the living room." Hi, sweetheart." Mom called without looking up. Her phone lit her face in that soft blue. "You're early." I was just, oh. She finally glanced up and saw the folder under my arm. The smile flickered. I sat at the kitchen table because that's where the truth lives in this house. Not in the living room with the framed graduation photos and the decorative pillows nobody leans on. In the kitchen with the scuffed chairs and the bowl of fruit that's always 2 bananas away from a fruit fly outbreak. Mom and Dad followed. Dad took his usual seat by the window. Mom stayed standing, one hand on the chair back like she might need to steady herself. I laid the papers on the table. Crestline logos. Notary stamps. Aurora Craft and Company underlined as if to be helpful. I put my finger on the signature that wasn't mine. "What is this?" I asked. No drama. No accusation. Just 4 small words that asked to be handled with care. For a heartbeat, nobody breathed. Dad's eyebrows knit. He picked up the top page, squinted, then set it down like it was hot. Mom inhaled through her nose, the way she does before she tells a waitress there's a problem with the order, but it's not a big deal, really. She hates to be a bother. "Alex," she said finally, voice too bright. "We were going to tell you." That was the moment the room shifted, like the floor had tilted a degree, and nothing would sit quite where it used to. The refrigerator motor clicked on. The cedar branches scratched the window. Somewhere down the street a dog barked at a thing only dogs can see. I looked at my mother, the woman who pressed a smiley sticker on a file box and called it safety, and saw the truth arranging itself behind her eyes like furniture in a house that had been quietly redecorated while I was away. "We were going to tell you," she said again, softer this time, and the words hung there between us like a bridge that didn't reach either side. The silence after my mother's words wasn't empty, it was thick, the kind of silence that hums in your bones. Dad shifted in his chair like it had suddenly grown spikes. Mom smoothed the papers on the table, not to read them, but to buy time. "You were going to tell me?" My voice came out low, steady, more dangerous for its calm. "When? After the bank repossessed my car? When debt collectors started calling my job? Or were you hoping I just wouldn't notice $46,000 missing from a life I've spent years keeping clean?" "Alex," Dad began, his voice heavy with that old mix of authority and pleading. "Listen. It's not what you think." I almost laughed. That line again. As if the notarized signatures and my ruined credit report were somehow optical illusions. Mom tried a softer angle. It was just to help Ryan get started. The bank wouldn't look at him without a cosigner. You know how the world works. It rewards people with stability. You have that. Your brother, he needed a chance. I pushed the paper across the table until it tapped her wrist. A chance with my name. My future. My credit. Without asking me. Her eyes flickered, just for a second. A crack in the mask. Then she put on that smile, the one she uses at church potlucks when the casserole burned, but she insists it's supposed to be crispy. We thought you'd understand. You've always been generous. Generous, I repeated. The word tasted like ash. Dad leaned forward, elbows on the table. His knuckles were pale. Son, Ryan's business isn't just some pipe dream. He's building something real. A workshop, a storefront. He's finally on the right path. If he makes it, we all make it. This family needs him to succeed. And if he fails? I asked. What then? Who pays when the bills pile up? They didn't answer. They didn't have to. The silence said everything. A sound drifted from the hallway. Footsteps. Then Ryan himself appeared, hair messy, hoodie unzipped, phone still in his hand like it was glued there. He looked at the stack of papers on the table, then at me. His mouth curled into a smirk, the kind that had gotten him out of 1,000 tight corners. Oh, he said, dragging the word. So you found out. I stood slowly. The chair scraped the floor, sharp and ugly. You used my name. My credit. Without permission. Ryan shrugged, leaning against the doorframe like he was starring in his own commercial. Relax, man. It's not like it's gonna hurt you. The bank loves you. They gave us better rates because of you. Think of it as an investment in family. The casualness in his voice lit something inside me. A fuse, maybe. Or a blade. Family doesn't steal, I said. Family helps, he shot back. I'm the one with the vision. You're the guy with the spreadsheets. This way, we both do what we're good at. Mom stepped in quickly, voice sweet but sharp around the edges. Alex, please. Don't make this ugly. It's already done. The loans are in motion, the business is moving. Ryan just needs time. He'll pay it back. Ryan laughed, short and derisive. Eventually. The room tilted then, not literally, but in that way truth makes everything shift. I saw it clearly for the first time, the roles carved years ago. Ryan the dreamer, forever failing upward. Me the net that caught him, stretched thin until it frayed. Mom and Dad, the architects of the lie, choosing favorites in whispers and forged signatures. I gathered the papers into a neat stack, slid them back into the folder, and tucked it under my arm. This ends now, I said. Ryan rolled his eyes. You can't undo it. The accounts are already open. Then I'll close them. Good luck explaining fraud charges to the cops, he sneered. Your name's on everything. That hit like a punch I didn't see coming. My name. My signature. My liability. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the responsible one. I felt like the fool who'd left the keys in the ignition while my own family drove off with the car. But I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw anything. I just looked at all three of them, my parents sitting small in their own kitchen, my brother lounging like a king in exile, and said, I'll fix this. And when I do, you'll never have the chance to use me again. Then I walked out, leaving the smell of roast chicken and betrayal behind me. The letter stayed on my table for hours, folded into a sharp little square, daring me to touch it again. I didn't. Instead, I stared at it while the city outside hummed its usual evening rhythm. Car horns, footsteps, the bakery downstairs closing its shutters. Life went on like nothing was burning. But inside me, something had already caught fire. The next morning, I walked into the law office again, Ryan's note in hand. My attorney, Ms. Chen, read it once, then twice, then slid it back across the desk with a grim expression. "This is intimidation," she said flatly. "Not subtle, but effective. He's trying to scare you into silence." It worked, I admitted. Part of me feels like I'm betraying them. She leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "Alex, let's be very clear. They betrayed you. They forged documents, saddled you with debt, and are now threatening you to keep quiet. That's not family. That's exploitation dressed up as loyalty." Her words landed like a hammer. I left the office with my affidavit formally filed. The bank would freeze all disputed accounts. The next step? An investigation. That night, Mom called again. I almost didn't answer. But some old reflex, the child in me who still wanted her approval, made me swipe the screen. "Alex," she began, her voice too soft, too rehearsed. "We heard you went to the police." "I did," I said. Silence. Then a shaky inhale. "Do you understand what you've done? You could ruin your brother's future. You could destroy this family." "No, Mom," I said, my voice cracking despite myself. "You destroyed it when you signed my name on loans without asking. When you made me a co-owner of something I didn't choose. That's when the family broke." Her breath caught. For a second, I thought she might apologize. But instead she whispered, "We only wanted to protect him. He's fragile, Alex. Not like you. You're strong. You can handle this." My chest tightened, the old script playing out again. Ryan the fragile dreamer, me the strong, dependable shadow. I felt 16 again, cleaning up after one of his parties while Mom insisted, "Don't be too hard on him, he's under pressure." "Strong doesn't mean disposable," I said. Then I hung up before she could reply. The calls didn't stop. Dad tried next, his tone heavy with disappointment rather than pleading. "Son, you're making a mistake. The cops don't need to be involved. We'll work this out. We always do." "By work it out, you mean I pay and Ryan plays," I snapped. "Not anymore." His voice hardened. "Do you really want your brother to have a criminal record? Do you want to see him in handcuffs? Because that's where this is headed." The words hit harder than I expected. The image of Ryan, smirking 1 second and cuffed the next, flashed in my head. And for a sliver of a moment, I felt guilt, not because he didn't deserve consequences, but because I still couldn't erase the fact that he was my brother. Later that week, I came home to find Ryan waiting on the steps of my building. Hoodie up, hands shoved in his pockets, eyes darting like a trapped animal. "You really did it," he said when I approached. His voice was low, but the rage underneath was clear. "You actually filed. You want to see me in jail that bad." "I want my life back," I said. "You'll regret this," he hissed. "You think Mom and Dad are gonna forgive you? You think the rest of the family won't take my side? You're painting yourself as the villain." "I don't care about sides," I said, brushing past him toward the door. "I care about the truth." His voice followed me up the steps, sharp and cutting. "Truth doesn't matter when everyone loves the lie." The words echoed in my chest long after I shut the door. A week later, a detective called. The bank had turned over all the documentation, and the investigation was moving forward. They wanted me to come in for an interview. But before I could even process that, an email hit my inbox. Subject line, "Urgent, Aurora Craft and Company. Default notice." The business loan was already in arrears. Payments missed. assets at risk. And my name was still tied to it. The email sat in my inbox like a live grenade. Aurora Craft and Company, notice of default. Balance due. $18,450. Immediate payment required to avoid escalation. My throat tightened as I read the words again and again. It didn't matter that I'd already filed fraud claims. On paper, I was still a co-owner, which meant creditors didn't care about family disputes or betrayal. They cared about numbers, about missed payments, about me. That night, I barely slept. Every sound outside my apartment, the rumble of the bakery's delivery truck, the radiator knocking like a fist against the wall, felt like a countdown. When morning came, I ironed a shirt with shaking hands and went to meet the detective assigned to the case. Detective Alvarez looked nothing like the TV version of Cops. No trench coat, no brooding silence. Just a short, sharp-eyed woman in a gray blazer, her pen tapping steadily against a yellow legal pad. "Mr. H," she began, "let's start from the top. How did you first learn of the loans?" I walked her through it. The bank call. The notarized documents. The co-ownership of a business I'd never stepped foot in. She listened, nodding occasionally, only interrupting to clarify dates and names. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. "You realize, if we pursue this, your parents and your brother could face criminal charges. Fraud. Forgery. Possibly conspiracy." I nodded, my stomach tight. "Do you want that?" she asked. It was a question I'd asked myself 100 times. And the answer was always the same, no matter how much it hurt. I want my life back. I want this off my name. She scribbled a note, then looked up. "Then you need to be ready for what comes next. People don't take kindly to being exposed, especially family. They'll push back." Push back was an understatement. Because 2 days later, I walked into work to find Ryan waiting outside my office building. He wasn't smirking this time. He looked wrecked, eyes bloodshot, hair greasy, his hoodie stained. "Alex," he said, stepping in front of me, blocking my path. "You don't understand. If this business collapses, I'm done. Everything I've worked for, it's over. Please. Just stall the investigation. Give me time to fix it." "Fix it?" I barked a bitter laugh. "You've been fixing it with my name, my credit, my future. There's nothing left to fix." He grabbed my arm, desperation sharp in his grip. "You're my brother. You can't do this to me." I pulled free. "No, Ryan. You did this to me." Security came out a minute later and told him to leave. But as he walked away, he turned back, eyes wild. "If I go down, I'm not going alone." The threat hung in the air like smoke. That night, Mom showed up at my apartment. No warning. Just her knock, soft, polite, but insistent. I opened the door, and there she stood, clutching a Tupperware container of roast chicken like it was a peace offering. "Alex," she said softly, "can we talk?" I let her in, though every part of me screamed not to. She sat at my table, smoothing her skirt, eyes watery. "You don't know what it's like, watching your child struggle. Ryan, he's not like you. He doesn't have your discipline, your stability. If we didn't help him, he'd drown. So you decided to drown me instead?" My voice cracked, sharper than I intended. Tears welled in her eyes. "We thought you'd understand. You've always been so strong, so reliable. We never imagined you'd see this as betrayal." "Because you don't think of me at all," I snapped. "I'm not your son, I'm your safety net. A name you can sign when Ryan needs another lifeline." Her face crumpled, but I didn't let the silence soften me. You want me to drop this? I said. Then you pay the debt. You clear my name. You fix what you broke. She shook her head, whispering, We don't have that kind of money. And there it was, the truth. The house, the savings, everything had already been poured into Ryan's dream. They hadn't just stolen my name. They'd gambled the family's future on it. I stood, pointing to the door. Then this conversation is over. She lingered, looking at me with that mix of guilt and expectation she'd perfected over the years. But when I didn't move, she finally rose and left, the container of chicken still on the table. I stared at it for a long time before throwing it in the trash. The next day, I got a call from Alvarez. Mr. H., we've located additional accounts tied to your name. Equipment leases. Vendor contracts. It's worse than we thought. How much worse? I asked. Closer to $75,000. My knees almost buckled. $75,000 of debt. My name. My signature. My problem. And my family's silence was louder than ever. 75,000. I kept repeating the number in my head like if I said it enough, it would shrink. But it didn't. It just sat there, heavy and immovable, crushing every thought beneath it. Debt collectors started calling within days. At first, it was just automated voices. This is an attempt to collect a debt. Then it turned into real people, firm, polite, and relentless. Some of them called me at work. One even showed up at my apartment, sliding a letter under my door with a cheerful, "Good luck, buddy." I called Alvarez in a panic. How can they do this if it's under investigation? They can pursue payment until the case is resolved, she explained. That's the ugly truth. On paper, you're still responsible. I didn't say anything for a long time. She finally added, Mr. H., I've seen this before. You need to prepare yourself. If your family doesn't back down, this could get uglier. Uglier. I thought it couldn't get worse. Then Dad called. Son, he said, his voice gravelly. We need to meet. Face to face. No lawyers. Just us. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at the diner near their house, the one with cracked vinyl booths and a waitress who's been there so long she knows everyone's coffee order by heart. Dad slid into the booth across from me. He didn't look like himself. His hair was thinner, his shoulders slumped. He stirred his coffee without drinking it. Alex, he said, you've got to stop this. You're tearing the family apart. No, Dad, I said, my voice tight. Ryan tore it apart when he stole from me. You and Mom helped him. His jaw clenched. We didn't steal. We borrowed. And we would have paid it back. With what? I shot back. You have no money left. The house is mortgaged to the rafters. Your savings are gone. Everything's gone because you gambled on Ryan. He flinched, just slightly. That's when I realized, he knew I was right. Still, he tried one last tactic. You're stronger than your brother. You can handle this. Isn't that what family is? Carrying each other when one of us can't. My laugh was bitter, sharp. Carrying each other? I've been carrying this family my whole life. Mortgage payments. Grocery bills. And now this. When has Ryan ever carried me? He didn't answer. He couldn't. I leaned in, my voice low. This isn't about family anymore. This is about survival. And if you think I'm going to drown for Ryan's mistakes, you're wrong. For the first time, Dad's mask slipped. His voice cracked. If you do this, you're cutting us off. You'll never get us back. I stared at him. Maybe that's the point. I left him sitting there, staring into his cold coffee like it might hold answers. That night, Ryan blew up my phone with messages. Ryan, you think you're better than me? Ryan, you'll regret this. Ryan, you're dead to me. And then, the last one. Ryan, if I lose everything, so do you. That one made my blood run cold. Because it wasn't just a threat. It was a promise. The next morning, my landlord slipped a note under my door. Your rent payment bounced. Please resolve immediately. My stomach dropped. I checked my account. Negative balance. Somehow, Ryan had gotten access and drained my checking account. He wasn't bluffing. He was dragging me down with him. The screen glowed red with a negative balance, and I just sat there, staring. For years, I'd prided myself on being careful with money, on keeping my accounts neat, my bills paid, my credit clean. Now, one reckless swipe of Ryan's hand had undone everything. I called the bank immediately, voice shaking. Someone accessed my account without authorization. The representative pulled up my file, then hesitated. Sir, the transfer was initiated from a joint account. My blood went cold. What joint account? Aurora Craft and Company, she said. It lists you as co-owner. The funds were moved to cover overdue vendor payments. My stomach dropped. Ryan hadn't just stolen my name, he had tied every part of my life to his sinking ship. I hung up without saying goodbye and sat in the silence of my apartment, broken only by the radiator clanging like a judge's gavel. It felt like the world was delivering its verdict, guilty by association. That night, Alvarez called. We're moving forward with charges, she said. Forgery, fraud, identity theft. It's enough to hold him. My throat tightened. So, Ryan could actually be arrested. Yes, she said. But we'll need you to testify. I couldn't answer. The word testify rang in my head like a church bell. Later, I got another text, this time from Mom. Mom. Please, Alex. Don't let this happen. He's your brother. We'll figure out the money. Just stop before it goes too far. Too far. As if draining my accounts, ruining my credit, and burying me under $75,000 wasn't far enough. I didn't reply. But the decision gnawed at me. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every childhood memory. Ryan sneaking out the window, Ryan charming teachers, Ryan crashing Dad's car and somehow being forgiven before the insurance report was even filed. Every mess he made, someone else cleaned up. Usually me. And now, here I was again. Except this time, the mess wasn't spilled beer or a dented bumper. It was a crime. The next morning, I walked into Alvarez's office. Do it, I said. My voice cracked, but the words stood. Press the charges. She nodded. Good. We'll handle the rest. The following week was chaos. Subpoenas went out. Investigators collected documents. And then came the phone call. Mr. H., Alvarez said. We've arrested Ryan. The words punched the air out of my lungs. I asked where. She told me, the workshop. He hadn't even seen it coming. That night, my parents showed up at my apartment. Dad's face was red, his fists clenched. Mom's eyes were swollen from crying. You monster, Dad spat. You called the cops on your own brother. No, I said, standing firm. He called them on himself the moment he forged my name. You've destroyed this family. Mom sobbed. I shook my head. No. You destroyed it when you chose him over me, again and again. All I did was stop letting you use me as the cleanup crew. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Dad pointed at me, trembling with fury. You're dead to us. And just like that, they turned and walked out, the door slamming so hard the walls shook. I slid down against it, heart hammering, hands numb. For the first time in my life, I was truly alone. But beneath the loneliness, something else stirred. Relief. Because finally, I wasn't carrying their mess anymore. At least, that's what I thought. Until 2 days later, when a letter arrived from the court. Aurora Craft and Company had declared bankruptcy. And as co-owner on paper, I was still entangled in the fallout. The envelope was thin, but the weight of it nearly broke me. Notice of bankruptcy proceedings, Aurora Craft and Company. Words leapt off the page: liquidation, creditors' claims, co-owner liability. My hands shook as I flipped through the legal jargon. No matter how many times I blinked, one line stayed sharp. Alexander H. jointly liable. It didn't matter that Ryan was sitting in a cell. It didn't matter that I'd filed every fraud affidavit, every police report. The court saw me as a partner, a co-owner, a man with skin in the game. By Friday, my phone rang off the hook. Creditors, attorneys, collectors, each voice colder than the last. Mr. H. will be seeking repayment through wage garnishment. Mr. H., your credit score is flagged. You may be ineligible for housing renewal. Mr. H., failure to respond will result in escalation. Each call felt like a noose tightening. I called Alvarez. How do I stop this? She sighed. Bankruptcy law doesn't care about family drama. Until the fraud case resolves, you're on the hook. We'll fight it, but it could take months, years. Years. My life, held hostage by Ryan's lies. That night, I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by papers, statements, notices, threats, and felt the walls closing in. I had never missed a bill in my life. Now I was being buried alive under debts I hadn't created. Then, as if the universe wasn't cruel enough, I got another message. Not from Ryan, he was locked up. From my parents. Mom. Alex, please. He doesn't belong in jail. Drop the charges. We'll figure out the money. Dad, you've made your point. Don't ruin your brother's life over paperwork. Paperwork. That's what they called $75,000 of forged contracts and stolen credit. I didn't answer. But the next day, when I checked my mailbox, I found a new envelope, this one without a return address. Inside was a photocopy of my driver's license. My signature at the bottom had been traced, shaky but close. Scrawled across the page in Ryan's handwriting. Still family, right? My stomach turned. Had Mom or Dad slipped this to me? Were they smuggling notes from Ryan? The thought made my skin crawl. I drove to their house that evening, fury pulsing in every step. The porch light glowed like always. The cedar tree swayed, indifferent. Mom opened the door, eyes red, clutching a tissue. Dad loomed behind her, jaw set. Where did you get this? I snapped, holding up the forged license. They exchanged a glance. Too long. Too heavy. Alex, Mom said softly. Ryan, he made mistakes. But he's your brother. Don't let some signatures tear this family apart. That's not an answer, I barked. Did you help him? Did you forge my documents too? Her silence told me everything. Dad stepped forward, his voice low and dangerous. We did what we had to do. Ryan needed a chance. And you were too selfish to see it. My chest felt like it was caving in. My own parents. Not just complicit, active. They hadn't just looked the other way. They had held the pen. 4 years, I had been the reliable one, the strong one, the safety net. But now, staring at them in the doorway of the house I grew up in, I realized the truth. I was never their son. I was their insurance policy. I backed away, my voice barely steady. We're done. All of us. Mom reached out, tears spilling. Please, Alex. Don't do this. But I turned and walked into the night, the photocopy of my stolen life crumpled in my fist. Behind me, the door closed with a sound that felt final. Except it wasn't. Because the next morning, I woke to a voicemail from an unknown number. Ryan's voice, scratchy and furious. You think this ends with me in jail? Think again. If I go down, I'm taking you with me. The voicemail played on repeat in my head all morning. Ryan's voice, raw and ragged, still found a way to smirk between the threats. If I go down, I'm taking you with me. It didn't make sense at first. He was in jail. His business was bankrupt. His lies had already unraveled. What else could he possibly use against me? Then Alvarez called. Mr. H, I need you to come in. Something surfaced during the investigation. It's serious. The way her voice dropped on that last word made my stomach twist. At her office, she slid a folder across the table. Inside were documents I hadn't seen before, loans, leases, credit applications. Some bore Ryan's sloppy forged version of my signature. But others were perfect. Too perfect. Because they weren't Ryan's work. They were my mother's. The loops. The pressure on the downstrokes. The way the letters tilted just slightly left. I'd seen her handwriting all my life. Birthday cards, shopping lists, notes in my lunchbox as a kid. I would have recognized it anywhere. I sat frozen, staring at the proof. She signed these? Alvarez nodded. We had a handwriting analyst confirm it. Your parents weren't just complicit, Alex. They were co-conspirators. They didn't just enable Ryan, they participated. My chest hollowed out. It wasn't just Ryan stealing my future. It was them. My parents. The people who raised me. Alvarez leaned forward. We can add them to the charges. But it's your call whether we move forward. Do you want to prosecute your own parents? The question ripped me open. For days, I'd told myself this was about Ryan, the reckless brother who'd burned through every second chance. But now the truth was laid bare. Ryan wasn't the architect of this betrayal. He was just the favorite child, shielded at any cost. The architects were the two people who had always told me family meant sacrifice. What they really meant was my sacrifice. That night, I drove aimlessly through the city. Streetlights blurred in the rain. My phone buzzed with another text from Mom. Mom. Alex, please. Don't destroy us. We only wanted to help him. Not a shred of apology. Not a word about me. Just Ryan. Always Ryan. I didn't reply. The next day, I walked into Alvarez's office with my decision. My voice shook, but I forced the words out. Include them. Her eyes softened, but she nodded. All right. We'll proceed. The fallout came fast. Detectives showed up at my parents' house. My dad called me that evening, his voice a venomous growl. You ungrateful bastard. After everything we did for you, this is how you repay us. You didn't do it for me, I said quietly. You did it for him. Always for him. Then I hung up. For the first time I felt free. Hollow, broken, but free. But freedom has a price. Because 2 weeks later, I received a summons. Ryan wasn't just defending himself anymore. He was blaming me. In his statement, he claimed I had been the mastermind. That I'd used him as a front, and my parents had only followed my lead. He painted me as the calculating one, the brother with the spreadsheets, the one who orchestrated everything from the shadows. It was a lie. But in court, lies have teeth. And now, I was the one on trial too. The courthouse smelled faintly of dust and coffee. Two things that never left no matter how many times the floors were polished. I sat at the defendant's table, hands clenched so tightly my knuckles ached. Across the aisle, Ryan leaned back in his chair, dressed in a suit that didn't fit, smirking like this was all some performance he was destined to win. Mom and Dad sat behind him. Not behind me. Not even in the middle, neutral. Behind him. Their eyes didn't once meet mine. When the judge entered, the room rose. My heart hammered like it wanted out of my chest. This was it. My life, my name, my future, all dangling on the edge of what strangers would believe. The prosecution went first. Alvarez presented the stack of forged documents, laying them out like cards in a game. Here is Mr. H.'s original signature, she explained, pointing to my ID. Here are the forgeries made by his brother. And here, she paused, voice steady but sharp, are the signatures traced by his parents. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Even the judge leaned forward. Ryan shifted in his seat, but didn't lose the smirk. When his attorney rose, he spun his story smoothly, like he'd rehearsed it in front of a mirror. My client, the lawyer said, was manipulated by his older brother. Alexander H. was the financial brain behind this scheme. He used his family as pawns. They merely followed his lead, trusting his so-called expertise. Ryan nodded along, playing the victim perfectly. If I hadn't lived through it, I might have believed him myself. Then it was my turn. When I took the stand, my hands shook. But my voice was steady. I never agreed to these loans. I never signed these contracts. My brother used my name, and my parents helped him. 4 years, I was the reliable one, the one who fixed their messes, paid their bills, carried the weight. This time, I refused. And when I refused, they didn't just ask. They stole. The courtroom was silent. Even Ryan's smirk flickered. Alvarez handed me one last piece of paper. The photocopy of my driver's license. My mother's handwriting traced across the bottom. Do you recognize this? She asked. I nodded. Yes. That's my mother's handwriting. I know it because she used to write me notes in my school lunches. Notes that said things like, "Good luck on your test," and "We're proud of you." The same hand that encouraged me as a child signed away my future without asking. The words caught in my throat, but I forced them out. That's not protection. That's betrayal. When I stepped down, the room felt heavier than before, but something inside me was lighter. I had spoken the truth. The deliberation didn't take long. Ryan was convicted on charges of fraud and forgery. My parents were found complicit, guilty of conspiracy and aiding fraudulent activity. The court cleared me of all liability. The debts, the contracts, the bankruptcy, all stripped from my name. But victory didn't feel like triumph. As the judge read the verdict, Ryan turned in his seat and glared at me, lips curling into a hiss. This isn't over. Mom broke down sobbing. Dad just stared at me, eyes like stone, as if I were the one who'd betrayed them. I walked out of that courthouse alone. Free, yes, but with no family left. Outside, the city moved like nothing had happened. Cars honked, people hurried past, life went on. I stood on the courthouse steps, breathing in the cold air, and let the weight fall from my shoulders. For the first time, I wasn't their insurance policy. I wasn't their scapegoat. I was just me. And maybe that was enough.